why do you want to be a nurse? And I go, well, because boys are doctors, girls are nurses. And she goes, here we go. Girls can be doctors too. And I look at the TV, I look back at her, and I move my brown bangs out of the way, and my big eyes are nice and bright, and I go, nah, I want to be a nurse. She's blonde and pretty. And the look on my mom's face was of such disgust and such, what? I could have passed the torch to you. And I disappointed her. But you want to know something? I went on and I got my MD. And you know who I now disappoint? The whole entire country. I am in the most hated profession now. Doctors. Doctors are blamed for everything.
Yeah.
It's doctors' fault for the pharmaceutical company and this whole Enbrel-Pfizer mess up. It's doctors' fault for Obamacare. It's doctors' fault we need Medicare for all. It's doctors' fault we have the opioid crisis, right? Those 5 Lortab I gave you for your toothache, boom, you're on fentanyl now. It's doctors' fault for the obesity crisis. Why? Because I told you to quit smoking. So now instead of smoking, you're eating. It's doctors' fault for the vaping crisis. It is doctors' fault for everything. And you want to know what I'm guilty of? I'm guilty. Because I let pharmaceutical companies come into my office and hand me a free pen.
And lunch.
And lunch. And I ate that lunch and I used that pen. So if you want to know why I'm in medicine, why I'm in radio, and I took on a career in radio, because it's the only place people like me. People hate doctors and I want people to like me. Now, you're gonna like who's the moderator of this. Okay, I'm sorry, I need my glasses. I have a beautiful introduction. You don't need an introduction, but the executive director of programming of ABC News Radio, Disney, was with WIOD for years. He's an icon. And ladies and gentlemen, Andrew Kauf.
I am not a doctor. This is an honor. Jim Bohannon, first thing I ever did in radio, run the board at WIOD when Jim Bohannon was on the radio.
Sure.
I get to look right at him. This is awesome. But let's get right to it. We're on a tight schedule, and thankfully there's more people in the crowd than on the stage, so this is awesome. Thank you so much. Well, let's get going. Who do we have here? We have Heather Cohen, the Executive Vice President of the Weiss Agency. Let's give it up for Heather. Great to have Heather with us. We have Don Giordano, the host, WPHT Radio, Philadelphia. Danielle Lynn, host, The Art of Living and the Science of Life. And from WOR Radio, Michael Riedel. We've got to keep this moving. I was told people have flights to catch, trains to hit, dinner reservations, and show tickets. So let's get going. The purpose of this panel is launching and growing a talent career in 2019. The most important thing is we're here in 2019. We're not dead. Radio is not dead. Obviously, look who's here. We're here. That's the most important thing. And we're going to talk about how do you get into this business in 2019? And how do you do that? We've all come up different routes. Each and every one of us in this room, we have a combined interest in radio. There's no doubt about it. Thousands of years of career in this room. But let's find out what we have to do in 2019. Dom, what is the first thing you would tell somebody if they wanted to get involved? If they're a 20-year-old, first of all, they're listening to radio, which is great, and they want to be the next Dom Giordano. What do we have to do?
Don't do that. We don't need the competition. But in addition to that, it seems to me when I got into it, I was a guest, and that's how I was discovered, essentially. They liked what I did in WWDB, then put me on. We don't have as many opportunities. You can't be on the weekends. You can't be on overnights. Everything's syndicated. Small markets even, it's dreadful when it comes to that. So the area you might talk with a 20-year-old about is podcasting. Develop a podcast, develop an idea, get a podcast going. If you can prove you can get a sponsor for that, work with a station to do that, sell it through their website, do something of that nature. It's all toward getting you to be able to maybe guest host something small or to do something small. The other angle is to do that and develop your producer skills. How many producers you produce for Jim? I've had producers that have gone on to be on air or somehow or another, a few steps down the road, they've gotten on air. The other thing to do is to talk to people that have done this, that are realistic, that are not going to tell you what they did 30 years ago, that it's different today, but are encouraging, inspirational, and be incremental. This is a step-by-step, miniature steps even, just to get anywhere near doing this on a regular basis.
Good points. Heather, from your perspective, you worked at the radio station point of view, you worked at a network before, and now you're representing talent. What do you tell the young person when they come to you and say, God, I want to be the next big thing? What's the best thing you can tell them how to get started?
Sure. Well, I have the privilege of working with a lot of Hofstra students. I'm really involved with WRHU, and also a lot of young women involved with the Alliance for Women in Media. So I get to speak to them all the time, and I agree with everything you said. I think in addition, I really encourage them to be open to any type of job. So, for example, Erica Farber came to me recently and she said, we have an opening in the marketing department at the RAB. Do you know anybody from Hofstra? Contacted John Mullen. John Mullen gave me a bunch of applicants. One of them got hired. Now, that young lady wanted to be a talk show host. That's what she wanted to start as. But she has this incredible opportunity and she's open to doing marketing. So I think, an openness to be a producer, be a board op, go into promotions, go into sales, go into programming, whatever it may be, learn the industry, and I think everything will fall into place if you work really hard.
Thank you. Daniel, from your perspective, it's a different point of view, the way you handle your show and your topic. It's a different show. What would you tell somebody if they wanted to have a specific lane to be in, such as yourself?
So I started in talk radio in 1983, and I launched the health and lifestyle category. And I was told by everyone that it would never work. No one wanted to hear about health or life. The big guns came in and said, we want your show, but just when you go in there, don't talk about consciousness or the water. So I think that for me, what I learned is I did not come into this industry to be here. I came because, and I'll only take 1 second to tell you my truth. My brother went into the ghettos in Mississippi and was murdered there. And out of that, before it happened, we created a pie, which was this pie based on integrity. And when he died, I realized that the only way I could save his dream was the use of talk radio. So I went on talk radio to reach the people that I knew wanted to change their lives in that time period, which was 81. Michael wrote that article. So I really used radio for what I believe today it is. It is so significant what we do and why we do it. And I believe that the power of words, and we had a big conversation about this yesterday, I believe that the power of words is what's going to change our world. Every single word, every time we say war, we create war. And Wayne, what you said, I think is one of the most significant things for me. I would tell a young person, find somebody like a Wayne, find somebody like me. I never had a job. No one ever paid me for radio. I scrapped this thing. I pawned my jewels from my dreams. I did whatever it was going to take because I wasn't going to give up on something that I knew would save a dream. So I think you do have to have a dream. I love what you said, and I think we need to just coach people now. My show's about personal development and leadership. It's not a health show. It's a how do you navigate life show. And if you navigate because you care about your sponsors, I've been with the same radio stations for 25 years, and I've had the same sponsors for 27 years. They renew every single December, and we're sold out. So I think that's it. I think find people like me and people who can coach you, who would be willing to download the truth so that the next generation can be with us from grace, from grace. That's really it.
Thank you. Michael, each and every morning you and Len are sitting there talking about everything that's going on. Locally, about de Blasio, nationally, internationally, war, education, you name it, you're talking about it. How smart does a host that's coming in, that's just starting out, what do they need to know? What is the, how much of a given topic, what do you advise them in learning before they get behind the mic and knowing?
Well, mine is an improbable career because I was a newspaperman for going on 28 years and stumbled into this business. The only thing that I could say is I would be a little bit wary sometimes of over-preparing. You have to be up to speed on things, but it's not good to plan the jokes out, to plan the bits out. I find working with Len, we are woefully underprepared a lot, but that's where the fun comes in. Because you're thinking on your feet, and that's how most people are in life. And if Len comes at me with a point of view that I haven't considered before, it makes me sharper because I have to debate it. Whereas if we worked out the bit ahead of time, it would sound canned and stilted. So I think you come in knowing what's going on in the world, and then you don't really talk about what you're going to talk about on the show. We talk about everything else, not what we're going to talk about on the show. We plan it out, we know what the topics are going to be, but it's an old expression I learned in the theater, don't leave it in the green room. You want that spontaneity, that intimacy. You want the listener, I think, to be feeling as they're driving to work or listening to you at the kitchen table that they could jump in and say something just at that time. And don't be afraid to say stupid things. It's best when I'm an idiot and Len can say, you're an idiot. And then everybody else on the staff piles on and says, you're an idiot. You have to be confident enough to really say something incredibly stupid and let everybody make fun of you.
He was actually an idiot in the 7 o'clock hour this morning. You completely offended your producer. I don't think she's speaking to you.
But I would say, just one thing, I would say for young people, and when I talk to people about anything I've done, I've written a book and I was a newspaperman, the most important thing is you have to be a reader. You have to read books. You want to be a writer, you have to read great books. You want to be on the radio, read books, because you're creating images in your listeners' heads, and that's what writers do. That's what Dickens does, and that's what Jane Austen does. You want to be a storyteller, you've got to tell stories on the radio. Read Edgar Allan Poe, he knows how to tell a story. Whatever you want to do in the media business, really in anything in life, you have to be a reader. I mean, I really got my start in this business because of Don Imus. He had me on as a guest talking about Broadway, which is a beat that I covered for many years. Now, Don Imus, I guarantee you, does not care about Broadway at all. He just had me on because there happened to be a show called Spider-Man that was losing gazillions of dollars and people were being killed and all, and I was writing about it on the show, in my column, and Don had me on. He was not interested in Spider-Man, but I happened to mention that one of my favorite writers is Herman Wouk. Don loved The Winds of War. And he had me on every week after that. Not because of my expertise, but because I love the book, The Winds of War.
Wow.
Dom, a young person finally gets the opportunity to get behind the microphone. How important is it as a talk show host to be able to listen? How important is the art of listening when you're the talk show host, you're interviewing people, taking callers? Talk about listening.
Well, particularly if you're going to take a lot of calls, of course, because the way talk radio works, at least the way I think, and I don't know, maybe Jim might agree with it, that you hear something in a caller rather than just what you're going to say next. And that leads you, it's a nugget. You hear a host say, slow down. You'll hear a host talk about that. Person didn't even know they said it. They may be argumentative, or they say some fact that's way off, or just something interesting. And I've seen show after show from that generate to something completely different. You have to have the courage to do it. You have to have done it for a while, hear it for a while. But when you hear something like that, when you listen to it, you're not listening, I don't think, to be honest, to be empathetic and all that to callers. You can't possibly do that with the array of things. You're thinking about the caller, you're thinking about the next caller. But when somebody says something, what I'm looking for is unpredictable, fresh. Female callers often, much more so than males. Males, a lot of talking points. Female caller says something, because maybe they haven't called as much usually, that goes in a different direction. Go with that direction. That's often the type of thing that sparks stuff that you didn't know you were thinking about, but then when it flows, you can feel it. You get excited yourself. It's unpredictable.
Sounds good. Heather, how do we work with people when they get into the business finally and they're a young person starting out their career? The mix of social media and the show itself. This is a generation that social media comes first, second, and third. So they're gonna have a talk show. How do they have that line of what's important to socialize, what's important for the show, and then the convergence of both?
Well, I'll back it up a little bit. As an agent, I will tell you that probably in 40 or 50% of the conversations, if not more, that I get from fill-in-the-blank head of programming or fill-in-the-blank program director, when they call and they say, okay, confidentially, I have an opening coming up in 3 months, I need somebody with a huge social following. That's in, yeah, I would say at least half the conversations, the initial conversations. So the importance is there up front. And then in terms of using social, oh, it's so incredibly important. But I do have people that occasionally get in trouble. So always, you know, I know you've heard this 1,000 times and all of you know this, but be so cautious with anything that you put up. pictures, words, whether it's about politics, whether it's, you know, something, just pop culture. Just be so careful with what you post. And I don't know that it's necessary to overpost, but clearly be involved with Instagram and Twitter and you know, whatever platforms are really hot at that time. I like what Sid Rosenberg said earlier today. I mean, that's just, you know, an extension of the audience. You get to do your research that way. Maybe after the show, you get to see, oh, this 27-year-old is listening from Brooklyn, and this is what they cared about, and maybe that's a hot topic that I should be talking about more often. So I think it's for research, it's for growing the audience, but your boss really cares about it, so you have to do it.
Daniel, when you first started, you said you've been on some radio stations now for 25 years carrying your show. In the early days of your show, how did you know when you finally made it, when you were good? What was the moment?
I'm still asking that. No, you know, it's interesting because we had, you know, it was an open turf at the time. So it was kind of this fresh content. And I don't know if you know when you make it, except for that I asked Mark Murphy from Tay and iHeart, about 3 months ago. I said, gosh, you know, we've been together for 15 years. He said, Danielle, we've been together for 20. And I'm still here and you're still here. And I'm like, yeah. So I think you know you make it if you're doing it, if you're sold out, if people are writing you, if people are responding. Social media for the demographic that's on older talk radio, my demographics on podcasts are much younger because I do personal leadership and coaching and money and wealth and things like that. But on talk radio traditionally, the social media part is just kind of coming into it. The Facebook is live. But I think you know you make it if you're still here and people are buying, like you said. If people are buying and people are coming back and there's 32 sponsors that are coming on, they're saying, I'm supporting you because you're doing a good job. And I think you can only tell by the outside, and then it'll resonate inside if it's really true.
Michael, your long career in newspapers, transition to radio, you're hosting a radio show in New York City. When the young person says, getting into radio, was it easier than you thought, more difficult to do a day-to-day show, or is it exactly what you thought it would be, other than waking up at the ungodly hour that you wake up at?
Well, that is the challenge, waking up at that ungodly hour. But you know, it's fun because I'm a kid of the 70s, so you would think TV was important to me. To some extent, of course, it was. But the thing that I loved the most was E.G. Marshall on the CBS Radio Mystery Theater. And I had that radio in my room, and on Sunday nights, I would listen. I think it came on maybe 9:30. My parents would let me stay up. And I often say I really fell in love with the theater listening to the CBS Radio Mystery Theater because all those voices were the great actors of Broadway back then. I mean, Kevin Spacey's very first time in front of a microphone was on the CBS Radio Mystery Theater. And so when I am talking to Len, I'm talking to our great team on the morning show, I always just go back to that voice of E.G. Marshall and those great actors, and I just try to create an atmosphere. Sometimes it's fun and crazy and out of control. Sometimes you gotta tone it down a little bit. You are dealing with serious subjects. You're trying to create a mood for the listener, depending on what you're talking about. And you wanna give them some information, a story, because if you can tell a story, they will stay to the end if it's a good story. An anecdote, a little punchline, an unexpected laugh, little self-deprecation. All of those things I just have in my mind as Len and I go through 4 hours every morning. And I really feel our job is not that important. What we really are trying to do is giving people something, some news, and a few laughs along the way. And very important, I think, to be able to make fun of yourself and your workplace, and also make fun of your bosses, because most people want to make fun of their bosses, but they can't. So they love the fact that we have the freedom to make fun of all of our bosses. I find people really respond to that.
Dom, have you ever made fun of a boss?
Is Jared still here, or did he go home? He's still here. No, never did that, won't do that. I dismiss that man on that. That's out of line completely.
There you go.
Actually, our boss tells us things we shouldn't do, and we can't help ourselves. We do it anyway because that's what everybody really wants to do.
Well, I will say in some shows he's called the evil Jared, but that's another it's a character.
I know we're tight on time and everything. One last thing, Don, what is the one piece of advice, if you had to give one piece of advice to a young person starting, they're getting an overnight show, they've got their first 3-hour show coming up, what is the first thing you would tell them?
Well, I would tell them they finally have gotten in there, so they're halfway there. Now's their opportunity. And again, there's nothing that is, and I'm not talking about hard work in the sense of drudgery work, but loving this, living it. Your life is what's going to come out of here. Not the headline of the day, not any of those things. They're not the things over the years that I've seen that have gotten the most reaction. The most reaction, we're going to have our second child. A woman calls in and says, I'll have another one with you if you name him Thor. Stuff like that. We had a little contest going on. My wife overruled that. We all know that she had the naming rights at the very beginning. I had nothing to say about it. He ended up with Luke. But things like that, little stories like that, stuff with my wife, stuff with the kids, stuff that go there, your personal story. Find them. Don't be afraid of them. Play those things out. And you develop an ear or a sense or a feeling about some of them, of random things that happen to you. And if you get it just a couple cars and play with it and then hear their reaction, you can play with it a lot more. That's the type of thing that has staying power with people. Then they listen to you on the big moments. But those things are what connect.
Daniel, what about for you?
I think it's perfect that you said that last word because my whole thing is listening. I listen 24/7 to my dreams and I listen to conversations. And throughout this whole entire time, the most used word, does anybody know what it was since we've been here? Connect. More times than any other time that we've ever been together in Talkers, the word connect was said today. And I think that's the relevant, when something's said that much, and I would tell young people and new people who are starting, just pay attention and listen. You know, I'm in the natural products industry. I helped co-found that part of it. And now when you say gluten-free, look what happened when we said gluten-free long enough. We changed the entire bakery industry. So I think that the relevance of this connect today was very, very important. If we stay connected as a group and not divide, we'll change everything. So I would tell them to be who they are, be loyal to that and truthful.
Heather, what about a final thought from you on what you would tell that host beginning their first show from 12 midnight to 3 a.m.? What would you do?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, if this is a boy, I'm totally naming him Thor. Thank you for that. Good name, strong. What I tell usually students, if they're in a studio for the first time and they're so nervous, they're so scared, first of all, it's not going to be a perfect show, so relax. Think of one person. You're talking to one person. Maybe it's, her name is Susie and she's 40 years old. Just talk to her. Do that the whole show. You're going to be fine. And usually, not always, but usually they'll get back to me and they'll say, you know what, that was a good idea. It helped me relax a lot.
Michael, what did they tell you before your first radio show?
Nothing. I mean, for me, it really goes back. I had a great bunch of drama critic friends when I started out my career. Sadly, most of them are dead now. But they'd been in the business a long time. They were big names on the sides of buses and the slings under the marquees of the theater. And they were formidable people and had very healthy egos. And I used to go to Joe Allen with them, the Theater District restaurant, after shows, and we'd sit around with this round table, table 7 in the back, and they would just make fun of everybody, including themselves. And they would lash into each other, and they would wind up laughing about it all. And I keep that in mind when I'm dealing with Len, Natalie, and the people who work with us. We're just a bunch of people sitting around at that table at Joe Allen's making fun of everything, including ourselves. And you want the listener to think they could pull up a chair and they could join in the fun.
Well, we're out of time. Thank you so much to the panel, Dom, Daniel, Heather, and Michael.